Welcome to Tap Into Data. How are we doing?
I like what you did right there. You just went right to the record. So, first of all,
Just
buddy, happy
keep you on your
birthday.
toes.
Happy
Thanks,
birthday.
buddy.
Yeah. Oh,
33 years young.
33, eh? So we've known each other for a while because you were a few years out from turning 30 when we met.
Yeah, I
So,
think I was still in my 20s, young, dumb. I mean, not much has changed there, but
now get some gray hair going and then you'll be there.
we got the mountains. What are you drinking
So, of
today?
course, I have a little Corona action going on.
Oh, there
So
you
it's a little
go.
chilly. Unfortunately, I got a case from Costco today and I get home, take it out of the car, and all of a sudden the whole box breaks in half.
That's bananas.
That is bananas, but only one broke. So I was happy about that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, that's pretty good.
yeah. Not sure how that
That's
one worked
some
out,
like
but
in
little karma, little happy juice there.
happy.
So
It's because it was Friday the 13th, but it's also my birthday, so it levels itself.
it'd be cool to know if you're actually born on Friday the 13th back in the day or not.
I don't think I was. I
That
can't
would
actually
explain a
remember. I think I
lot.
looked that up one time. What the
Yep.
fuck is that supposed to mean?
You know what it means. So what do you want to talk about this week? Do you want to talk about some Dock 3s and capabilities of what those things are doing right now?
I feel like we should talk about Doc threes because I feel like that's all I talk about every day now
I know that's
is
your new
everyone
life,
using and
right?
rolling those out. I know. It
Bring that
went
up
from
into
like
Canada now, so it's great.
yeah, it went from like what a year and a half ago being like, hey, we could probably use these docks on some solar sites and see what the capabilities are to like now. I mean, so as you know, like I have an office at the Vertex HQ2 second warehouse. Um, but I mean, we have a warehouse that's over here that's just basically facilitating docks coming in and out. I mean, so it's pretty incredible to see just like the support and the scaling of what people are doing with docks now, from utilities to construction to mining to infrastructure. I mean, it's crazy. But if you think about it, scale technology, not in hardware, not people, right? I mean, it's kind of what the world's going to these days.
Yeah, and then one industry you didn't touch on was agriculture, which I was at a farm show recently and met a company that's really doing a lot of stuff with drones themselves in the agriculture industry. So we're gonna, I think, have some conversations around how the dock can complement that from inspection to imagery to point of execution for spray companies. So yeah, it's really big. And Canada here, it's fairly unknown. But I think over the course of this year, we're gonna make some traction, get some more of these things out there.
Yeah. What's been the most interesting application that you've heard of so far? I mean, obviously, like I've been working on docs for a while now. You've kind of been starting to be like, hey, let's see what we can get started as conversations in Canada. But what's the most interesting application that you've seen?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things that have come up recently is like how to manage construction projects from a progression aspect of it. So a lot of projects, right, from my understanding, is they're kind of like built out where you get paid when you hit milestones. Those milestones need to be verified by somebody in the field. But what we're looking to do is like a proof of concept of can we deploy these things and strategically place them at a construction site, establish geofencing, release them on a certain flight mission schedule, and then we can capture those progress reports in the time that's needed, right? So rather than say send someone out to a site to verify whatever it is, 10 pads have been poured for wind turbine. You can remotely launch the dock, go fly those 10 pads, confirm that they're there, and then you just close the loop on everything. So it's a really neat use case. We're hoping to start this one here probably about a month and a half's time, and yeah, start doing daily flights.
Yeah, that'll be incredible. I think that's the key too, right? It's like where are you doing, we're seeing some applications that are pretty unique with, doing kind of like systematic inspections on a broader scale, having the docks in a mobile scenario, right? So having them fixed mounted on vehicles like a pickup truck or a trailer, and be able to move them around and have them be kind of integrated so you have the ability to remote pilot, remote monitor, better data workflow overall. But there's definitely a lot of things out there that's just like, how do you put something on site at a remote site maybe and be able to monitor that remotely, right? Like, it sounds kind of redundant and ridiculous, but like for not a lot more, you can put this type of technology out there in the field, and be able to, create that kind of an incredible way of efficiency, with your pilots, right? So you have docks deployed in multiple sites. In some cases, you can do one to many. But even if not, you may have 5 remote sites, one pilot that typically spends a couple weeks going and traveling those every month, and now he can sit at his office, fly them all in one day, and have room to add more technology, more flights. Maybe that's more specialized manned operations, whatever that may be. Has more time to do the rest of his work.
Yeah, I like how you touch on the mobile application with the mounting system like this on the back of a pickup truck. Like one of the other conversations we've been having with the client is like historically you would go out to a site, manually fly the location, get back in your truck, head to your accommodations. When you get to your accommodations, that's when the uploading of data starts, right? Nothing happens in that travel period. But taking a mobile unit, equipping it with a device like Starlink, now would enable the data, right, to get uploaded up into the cloud while that transportation is occurring. So go from site to accommodation rather than having to sit there for a couple hours to do data transfer. That's being started, hopefully completed by the time you get back to your site. So that right there is just going to be a huge efficiency for people and turning deliverables back over to the client much quicker.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that we saw at the wonderful company of which you're wearing a hat to was how do you remove the manual intervention of data, right? So one of the ways we did that with wind turbine blade inspections back in the day was having all of that data come on, be contextualized at the time of capture onto an onboard compute, and then pushed up to the cloud through that onboard compute. And docs are really taking that to the next level, right? Because you're no longer dealing with SD cards or pilots having to manage data. You're capturing that, and to your point, if you're connected in the field, whether that be the fixed deployment or mobile deployment, with a Starlink, thanks Elon, then you can have that data transfer in near real time, right? So by the time you're doing the second inspection, your first inspection can already be up in the cloud through API connections, could already be through a data processing pipeline or into a landing spot where it's going to live and be reviewed, right? So you could be done flying for the day, and the team back at the office or the different business units that you're working with could have already reviewed the data that you flew that morning. So it's just the accessibility to that data in near real time is, I think, really shifting the industry. And I mean, most people, when you start talking about docs, it's like, hey, I can do everything with a manual drone. Why would I do it with a dock, right? Like, it's significantly more cost. So if you get the standalone drone that goes in the dock, you're under $10,000 with a full setup. You do it with a dock, you're getting up to like $40,000, right? So there's obviously significant more cost to adding the dock into the workflow, but it allows you to scale your efficiency and automation so much more. So the efficiency by I don't have to travel out to all of these remote sites. I can put docks out there, it can have them do it. I can enable it someone with a truck who may not be a drone pilot with the dock out there doing their regular work, their normal job, and while they're doing that, I can be flying the dock out of the back. And then the biggest thing when you start to look at one to many, whether that's in the United States or in Canada, is I can now fly multiple drones in a centralized command center with
Hmm.
eyes on everything, um, in a very streamlined way, rather than trying to do that multiple and do it across multiple sites, then be in the field and try to see that same efficiency. So it's definitely more of a cost up front for the hardware, but what you're going to gain as far as like efficiency with the number of employees, the time that you're out on site, um, every time we kind of lay that out and talk about that automation, talk about that efficiency, I've never had someone say, you know what, I don't want to go that way. And it's almost always like, I didn't even know you could do that. And I think that's really what, as we see as some of these conversations progress, is I truly didn't know that that was possible. And let me learn more about it, right? Because that's what we've really just seen kind of take off as we've been to some of the shows this year thus far, as we've had some of those conversations with larger organizations in both the United States and Canada, and soon to be other places as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, and you touch on like the data aspect of it, but then how versatile they are. Like when I was at that farm show, I heard someone just asking questions about like, are these docks equipped with a speaker that can emit an audible noise to disturb birds? Something simple as that, right? So you get farmers with corn and Birds are a bit of a problem. You can't manually fly that because you just be doing that all day long. But setting these docks up in locations where there are heavy bird activity, and you can remotely launch this and submit a noise or emit a noise and get rid of the birds, and it just comes back. So it's like not even so much the data aspect of how important these things could potentially be for the markets we work in, but also just the actual pure easeability of the use to have them, um, whether it's at a farm or any other location like that. It's gonna be really cool. It's gonna be neat to see, especially with the changes that have taken place here, right, in Canada with the beyond visual line of sight and the capabilities. I hope will be endless. Because then once we get into like wildfire mitigation strategies and stuff that is outside of just the data aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the unique part too, right? Because when you get into some of those applications, it's more about, what can you achieve with the technology than what the technology costs, right? So like if you can start to actually deploy this in a meaningful way and have a strategy that captures those wildfire corridors, that does, allows you to restore power more quickly in events where power has been taken offline or there's been outages. So like the restoration of power, which is obviously what most customers care about, right? Like everybody wants
Yeah, get me
utilities
back
to be
online.
safe.
Yeah.
No one wants a wildfire, but at the end of the day, everyone wants their fridge to stay cold, their house to stay warm or cold, right? The lights to stay on, TV to stay on. Otherwise, at my house, my 4-year-old will be,
Yeah,
not
no
happy
kidding.
with me.
Yeah.
Um,
And especially no
and
internet
so like
either. So
that's what it really comes down to, right? So like when you're talking about like individuals, it's like you expect your power to be on. Like we're fortunate that way, with where we live, that we are kind of pretty accustomed to that. But for the utilities perspective, from the government's perspective, safety around wildfire mitigation, and those types of outages is paramount. And if you can have infrastructure out there, hardware out there that allows you to take that restoration from days to hours, completely changes the game, right? And like depending on how you like, I always, as I've gone through and sold people or met with people or explained technology, I've always learned it's like every single persona is different, right? So like to the executive at the power company, it's, how do I reduce risk? How do I increase uptime? How do I increase safety and efficiency? To the public and the government, it's like, how do I make sure there's none of these events, no wildfire events, no natural disasters, none of these things that are affecting people's livelihoods, lives in general, those types of things. But then as like a consumer, it's just, I want my power to be consistent and I want my home to be safe, right? So like all of those are achieved when you put these technologies in place. And I'm not saying all of that is going to be done with a dock or all of that's going to be done with a drone, but I do think it is a critical piece of the puzzle, right? So as you have these like deployed cameras out in the world, as you're doing regular inspections, as you're doing the restoration efforts, all of these things and all of technology is going to lead the way in how fast you can do it, how efficiently you can do it, and how safe your operations can become. And what we're seeing, at least from my perspective, is a ton of interest and value in what you can cover with drones in those efforts. And every single one of them, right? Preventative, restorative, like all of them, drones, specifically drone in the box, and remotely piloted drones has been a huge point of interest in the space.
yeah, you're talking about utilities, right, and storm restoration. That's the industry I grew up in. 15 years in the utility sector as a forester. So I've spent many nights walking off-road corridor looking for a tree on the line that bumped the power. And it's risky. It's a very unsafe work environment, right? You're relying on what you think is your instincts, but sometimes some shadows of just walking with a flashlight, and it's just yeah. There's been many times, yeah, you step into a creek and you didn't see it. So having the docks or the drone capabilities to get out there and do some patrols will help just the industry itself, not even from the whole restoring power in a timely manner, but also the boots on the ground and the safety side of it. And that's one of the things we're trying to stress up here in the Canadian market is more on the safety side of things. When you get into remote corridors and rocky terrain, we know the power needs to go back on, but if there's a more effective way to do it, it should be communicated. Yeah, really hoping, again, like I said, the changes in November are going to make this a easier conversation with utilities from the West Coast to the East Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you touched on a perfect area too. It's like it's your basically becomes your eyes in the field, right? So if you're going out there to clear a line, and I can tell you, hey, here's where there's been contact with the line. Here's what it looks like. Here's the location of that. And I can do that without saying, "Hey, here's your 2 mile corridor," and I can fly that in minutes in a flight, and tell you exactly where those contact points are and exactly the best path to get there and what may be in your way. That just increases that safety and awareness of your situation so much more, right? Into really like, what are you walking into? What do you need as far as tools to restore the line? Who do you need as far as people to restore the line, and make that effort so much easier. Or in some cases, you're just clearing the line to say, hey, it's clear, I'm good to bring this line back online, right, or back to power.
Yeah, and I think as we shift from the data to other use cases for this, like when it comes to the payload with these things, like even just getting tooling into remote locations. But I know that's a whole different thing, and I only say that because I saw a video this morning of doing some offshore wind, and drones were bringing a tool bag and lowering it down into the nacelle or on the platform, right, and just making it rather than sending a boat out to get the tooling to people, we're utilizing drones now, and at one point it was helicopters getting a lot smaller and a lot user friendly.
Yeah, I remember still. So like I started in drones over 10 years ago now, right? And then I remember like one of the first times I ever went on a wind site. It was a wind site out in Western North Dakota, and we were using drones. And at this point, it was manual. I mean, compared to the drones using today, it was nothing. It was an Inspire One Pro, which was kind of the first. I don't know, like I would say like Pro series. Like this feels like we're going somewhere as an industry. And we went out there with an Inspire One Pro. We were doing manual inspections, so it was piloting skills were aplenty. Like you had to be very very good at what you were doing. There's a lot of manual intervention, and at that point I was just a visual observer, so I was watching and basically directing as we flew around a wind turbine blade. But that was like the first question a wind technician asked out there. It was a Siemens tech back in the day, and he's like, "So how easy would it be to bring a wrench up to the top of this wind,
Yeah,
wind turbine?"
so cool.
And
Yeah,
I'm like, it's a real thing, right? Like obviously from an inspection perspective, it's changing the game. And I remember the conversations then was, this is something that if you were on ropes and doing an inspection, which again is your background, well about that process, but you're talking a day or a good part of a day to do a full comprehensive inspection of the blades on the tower, and even then we were flying a full wind turbine inspection in say 40 minutes. I mean, now what we saw with Thread, what we see with a lot of others in the industry is you're sub 25 minutes, sub 20 minutes, depending on the length of the blades. And that's just where, I mean, a complete game changer, right? And the biggest thing there, most people are like, oh, well, you're saving time, right? You're saving money. The biggest thing that shifted that as an industry when that all started was safety.
yeah,
So you're telling me I can send up a robot, whether it costs 10,000 or 20,000, 50,000 or 100,000, doesn't matter. But like you're telling me I can send a drone up there or a robot up there to do work and not have to have a person dangling off the blade, like almost full stop every single time from a safety perspective, because that's the most important thing, right? In those scenarios.
yeah. Because once you do things safer, right, it's a better quality product, and your turnaround with the deliverable so much faster. And that's the other side that you see with these drones is the imagery, the capture, and the turnaround. Like you said about going down on a blade with on ropes to take pictures. Now you have to take SD cards back in the office and use multiple SD cards because of the volume of photos you're taking, right? And scroll through each individual one to identify the significant defect that's there where the drone onboard computes and other systems, right? It's plug and play, upload it, and you're good to go. So yeah, it's a lot faster, a lot safer, definitely.
Yeah. But the most recent question I've been bouncing back and forth with about the last week and a half is how. So obviously we've met working mostly in wind, right, over the renewable sector. That's where I've spent, again, as you just heard me talk about drones, for about the last 10 years, specifically was around wind turbine blade inspections, drones, automation, back-end computer, or machine learning to identify defects, what have you. And one of the things I got asked recently, because I've been living in this world of docs, if you will, is, hey, when are we going to have a doc A drone would be able to come out of a dock on the back of a wind technician's truck and do an automated wind turbine inspection. And it's got me thinking. So I've been having some conversations with some companies in the industry. Obviously, I'm no longer of the industry in some ways. I'm in a direct relationship, but have a lot of friends with a lot of companies that are doing automated wind turbine inspections in different ways, and have started that conversation because I think it would be super interesting. I mean, there is, like, to your point earlier, you talked about putting a speaker on it. You know, you can put lights on the drone. You can have parachutes. You can have the Manifold 3 in the case of DJI, so you can onboard compute on those. In the case of Skydale, that's built into some of their platforms with onboard compute. But like with all of that ability on the edge, right, and even more capabilities because you have the dock paired with it, it certainly opens the door to some interesting conversations, right? It's like, do you really need to enable a wind technician to do the inspection, or do you need to enable the wind technician to bring the technology there so the inspection can be done? So probably more to come on that too as I start to I don't know, find something new to geek out about, I guess.
No, I like where you're going there. Like when you talk about some of these new turbines that are coming, right? And the capabilities for Wi-Fi and remote monitoring or remote access and control over a turbine is like maybe we get to a time where you have a dock that's situated, multiple docks on a wind site, and they're positioned within their flight capability, and you're remotely controlling that turbine from a control center, and you're also launching the drone from the same control center, right? You're doing everything from the office, and then you're only going to the locations that need the work. Keep it taking the people out, just putting them where they're required, right, to get more work done. Yeah, I like where you're going with that. Now that has me thinking too of like what projects are out there, what wind farms are small enough where you can maybe get away
And
with two of
remote
them
enough,
and remote.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you don't have to travel across the site to site. And I think the biggest thing too, like I've seen, as going from this last 5 years, going to shows and hearing technology, is you have so many, whether it's in distribution, transmission, in wind and solar, you have so many systems out there that are monitoring the sites, right? That are monitoring like acoustics, vibrations, all of these things that are alerting you of, hey, there's a problem, or there may be a problem. Like, why can't you in those scenarios shut it off, have a drone fly out there, check it out, and send it back, right? It's that next level of validation to say like, okay, I felt something, I heard something, I'm gonna use the drone and I saw something, and then you say, okay, now I'm gonna have a technician go out there and do an internal inspection, right? Which still may be with a drone or maybe with some type of robotic crawler, but at the very least you are narrowing that down, right? So if you have a fleet of thousands of towers, you're narrowing down to hundreds of towers, to dozens of towers. So all of a sudden say, hey, this week I need you to look at these five because they've hit the first, three check marks that have required almost zero intervention besides a pilot remotely somewhere flying something. Zero manual intervention. And here is what we did to qualify to say, I need eyes on this. I need a technician to go fix it.
Yeah, it's
Or
like
take a look or confirm.
it's like a project we worked on, I think, together a couple years ago with a key owner, right, with some sensor technology that was in the industry of like field verifying that and doing it with drones. But going back to the comment you made before about using drones to do blade inspection, specifically like a dock, right? There's a couple of sites I can think of just in Canada alone where you meet at the O&M facility, you drive an hour to get to site. And that's for a service call, right? Whether it's blades or major components, something like that. But if you can cut that time down when it comes to an inspection component of having these docks in these remote locations where you're not you're not you don't have to do the 2 hour commute, one there, one back, plus also get out to the turbine itself, right? Within that 3 hour potential trip, you can get the entire site done if you have 10 turbines. And now you've just completed everything in that 3 hour time period that it took your technicians to get out there and get back. So it'll be a good
Yeah, I
thing to
mean,
kind of educate the industry over time with this technology and in its specific use cases, right? There's not every case, like you said before, is you still need the human element at some point. But if there are really high risk locations, and you talk about even just access roads and severe terrain to get out, like if you're traveling down a logging road, for example, right? There's a lot of vehicles going in and out both directions, and if you can limit that or reduce the amount of vehicles going there, it'll be great.
yeah. Well, and think of too. I mean, like the scenario, and we know this a lot from just where we where we're at in the world, right? But like, one of the things we talked about early on when I kind of was getting into wind was like, how do we do icing inspections, right? Because like, if there's icing conditions out there and a tower faults, and you want to turn it back on, or you need to have someone go work on it, like you need to validate that there's not ice, right? Because there's a risk, right, to fall. And I mean, in some cases, it's thick, right, like where it could cause severe damage to vehicles, infrastructure or people. So how do you deal with a drone, right? And our problem was always like, okay, well, in our scenario and most people's scenario, it's like you're going and putting a drone near the tower and then flying it, right? So for the automated aspects of it, which, in that case, well, you're going into the same area that you're not supposed to go in the first place. So typically we just don't. And you don't risk that, right? Unless you can spot, scope, and validate, which causes a bunch of different, challenges. So that was another thing I thought with a dock is like if you have a dock centrally located, as you mentioned, between five or maybe even a dozen towers, then you could actually fly remotely, check those types of conditions, check if there's a broken tip off a blade, check if there's icing, check if there's something has been struck before you bring it back online, right? And like a lot of that comes from like, I mean, that's what we're doing with distribution, transmission, solars. You're able to do these inspections quickly because you have the equipment out on site or in the back of a truck. Do these inspections quickly without putting someone in harm's way. Validate that it's safe to turn on power or create an action that you need to do before you can return to power, right? Or restart the tower or bring the generator back or the inverter back online, what have you. And that was another thing. It's like even if you're not doing it for these like systematic campaign type inspections on a wind site or on these remote locations, having it to be able to be that first line of, hey, is there icing or is the tower still standing or is the blade still in running condition or is there a major damage that we should not turn this tower back on for? Like even that gives you a ton of value, especially if you can put it, a few centrally located and cover a wide portion of a project. Like that's a ton of insight that you can gain without, to your point, ever having to even go to the site.
Yeah, yeah, and then you get lightning and everything else that has significant impact. You can identify it almost as soon as it happens, right? Once that storm rolls through.
Yeah. Don't fly it during the storm, just
Just
after the
after
storm,
the storm,
just to
yeah,
be clear.
yeah. Keep that in mind. So, okay, buddy. Well, that's a good talk. I like the docs. I like what you've been doing with them in the U.S. Very excited to get these things moving here in Canada. Get them out West Coast, East Coast, and just start using them. Yeah, all different industries. It doesn't have to just be the renewable energy sector. So, yeah, good things to come with that.
Yeah, and hopefully we get some people. I mean, I know I saved that little nugget for you. I was actually thinking about that on Wednesday when I was flying back, but hopefully we get some people thinking, right? I think that's really the goal here
Yeah.
is to share some of our crazy ideas, which just get us thinking on a regular basis, but then hopefully inspire some other conversations and thoughts to come about as well of how you can use this technology, how other people are using it, what's out there in the industry. I think we'll have some. I've been recently because I've been doing a lot of stock training, putting together some training videos, some kind of tutorials on how you set it up, how you get started, and what we're doing, as much as I can with what can be public versus what can't be. But I think we'll share more about that too, so people understand. Because I think based on the conversations I've had and what I've seen, there is confidently no one doing docs at the level that we're doing them, and using them for some of the applications that we're using them, the way that we're using them. But I'm sure people are doing cool new things each and every day, and it'd be really interesting to hear about what people are doing, how they're leveraging this technology, how they're leveraging other types of technology as well, to do inspections in those spaces that we talked about. So hopefully stir up some conversations for sure out of this one.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because yeah, I was out for lunch with someone today, and they're talking about what about airports? Like, what about getting these things just set up in an airport just to do parameter checks and stuff rather than having security drive? It's like that's one location I haven't thought about is like municipal airports, like really remote locations, right? So yeah, I'd be curious to hear conversations moving forward, especially for those that watch this episode and see what type of feedback we get.
Well, as always, thanks, buddy. It's fun
Yeah,
catching up.
Happy
when I have a
birthday.
beer, and it's a
And
birthday
it's your
episode,
birthday.
right? Birthday episode. It's bananas. We're
Getting a
talking about
tattoo
docs.
later, doing a tattoo.
Getting a tattoo
There
later,
we
like
go.
a true 33-year-old, and then
Yeah.
I'll immediately be going to bed because it'll be past my bedtime.
Yeah, no, for sure. I bet.
So,
So, okay, buddy.
all right.
Appreciate it.